Radio Row is back. Geoff Mosher, Adam Caplan, Andrew DeCecco. Hour 3 is brought to you by Rivers Casino and Sportsbook, home of Inside the Birds pregame live. Now, we've had Jason Avant and Greg Cosell on with us already today, kind of making up for the fact that we won't have them on the pregame show, but we do have a talented cast, and we'll be excited Sunday morning to break it down, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you've been a busy man today.
Yeah, this is, I'm trying to get us guests. I'm working for Sports Grid, doing interviews there. And the beauty of the Super Bowl is that you never know who's going to come by. We're going to get Ryan Leaf soon.
Oh, nice.
Ryan and I drew up a nice little friendship here. He's really cool. He's obviously been humble because of what's happened to his life and career. He's just turned his life around. But again, you never know. Josh Jacobs, I just walked by him, tried to get him to come over here, but he's totally booked. That's the only negative here is because the players who are here who represent brands, they have handlers.
Right.
And you basically have to get in a shouting match to get people to listen. No, I just need 5 minutes.
It's like the stock market.
Right. Right. I just need 5. Just need 5.
Right.
So Josh Jacobs was a no, unless we potentially get him right before we're done. But the cool thing is, again, you just don't know who you're going to see here. We're going to see actors and actresses. They usually come on Thursday and Friday. So, Andrew, this is your first Super Bowl, correct?
Correct.
What are your thoughts so far being here on Media Row? Sorry, Media Row.
Well, today's a lot more lively than yesterday.
Yes.
And I assume that tomorrow will be just
a madhouse. It's
yeah.
been pretty good today.
But yeah,
I think the Eagle fan takeover is coming like tonight.
I have a
soon
feeling
because I'm starting to notice. I just went outside for a few minutes before that. It's like yesterday was not lively downtown. It was like a normal night to me in Phoenix. And I think by tonight, you're going to see a lot more buzz and activity.
So I got here Tuesday and I'm staying downtown Phoenix here, right next to the convention center, about a mile away. And no, it was really empty Tuesday night. And then last night, I ran into Mr. Cosell at dinner in the Sheraton, which was fantastic. But you could start seeing the green. In fact, where I'm staying, I walk into this hotel, they have Eagle balloons. I'm like, wait a minute. Wow, I hope Chief fans don't see this. And of course, we saw the Kelseys. We interviewed Ed. We're going to upload that soon. Ed Kelsey, this interview, man, he was awesome.
He was.
He's a storyteller, man.
He was, yeah. Those who are waiting for it, we will have the interview with Ed Kelsey up pretty soon. That was a good story. You always wonder about someone's storytelling ability. But as soon as we had Ed Kelsey, when you have two sons like that, I figured the stories were going to come pretty naturally.
Sure.
There's just overflow. Did you ever see what was the movie? There's a movie with Vince Vaughn and Reese Witherspoon, and they both have divorced families, and on the holidays they have to go to each mom, and dad.
Oh, geez.
And Vince Vaughn's dad's kids are all like into wrestling, so they go into the house. And the sons are just sitting there like throwing each other against the walls and body slamming each other against the table.
I don't know that movie.
And Reese Witherspoon was looking around like, "What am I getting into?"
Right?
I kind of picture that maybe being what the Kelsey household was like when they were kids.
Probably mirror images.
Isn't there's a third son? At least I saw on their Instagram. I don't know what the kid's name is. I think there is a third son.
Cooper?
Oh, Cooper Manning. No. I know what you're talking about. But I think there is. I don't know. But anyway, no, it's super cool. Because I think the main talk from interviewing people, walking up to people you and I have seen so far, is pretty much everyone says by the way, we've run into a lot of not just Eagle alumni, guys who play for 49ers or whatever. Everyone says Eagles best roster.
Yep.
Okay. Should be a very close game. They're expected to be a great game. Not, how many Super Bowls have been duds. Now we'll be able to duplicate the best, and I think in NFL history is 2017, 41-33. No, because the greatest drama, Philly special, craziness of everything that happened. I don't think anything can ever duplicate that.
Right.
Because we don't have Tom Brady here. But then again, we have Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
So you never know. But I'm expecting a great game.
Yeah, I'm expecting me and Greg Cosell. We had the same X factor. We had the same score
Mahomes?
prediction. No,
Or Kelsey.
Jarek McKinnon.
Oh, inside the
sort of like a guy who you not a household.
Oh, I told you, I love the anytime TV. I strongly believe they'll score.
And we have the same score prediction, 31-27 Eagles. I think it's.
I'm going to get mine Sunday, but okay.
I think it's going to be a high scoring affair.
Close.
And I'm really excited to see both offenses go at it. I mean, it's going to be an explosive game, I think.
I couldn't tell because I don't think did we pin down Jeff Schwartz in hour 1 on a score? Because I felt like he was leaning toward Kansas City.
No, he did. No, he took the Chiefs. He did.
Yeah. Now, there's some bias. Usually the guys who play,
Sure.
But he's pretty good. I'm not listening. He's objective. But we have Jason Avant. He picked the Eagles. Greg Cosell said he believed the Eagles are going to win. And who am I missing? Who said that one?
Baldy said the Eagles.
And Baldy said the Eagles would win too. So that makes 3 out of 4. To your point, I feel like, you know, you have 10 conversations with analysts or coaches or players, and 9 out of 10 are picking the Eagles, with the caveat that they still think it's a close game. And if Mahomes has the ball at the end of the game,
all bets are
all
off.
bets are off.
And I was saying on the Fanatic earlier today, I'm like, Eagles cannot be in a field goal fest. They cannot be taking field goals because there's going to be Andy is going to throw and he's not going to stop. And Kelsey, we've seen this over the years. I get different coaching staffs, but the Eagles have been lucky. They haven't faced a lot of good tight ends. We know what Kittle, the 19 for 19. Kelsey's going to have a huge game. I'm just telling you. They're not really good at receiver. They're okay without Tyreek Hill. So Kelsey's going to have a monster game. You mentioned McKinnon out of the backfield, also in the red zone. We'll see what CEH does. We don't know coming off IR how much they'll use him because they don't run very much.
Right.
But it's going to be a Kelsey show, probably be a Goddard show. I can't wait to see the dueling tight ends.
Yeah.
Goddard is Kelsey Jr. There's going to be a lot of points scored in this game.
The other consistent thing we've heard along the lines of offense is that you should probably go in expecting that there's something you haven't seen before, or a player who hasn't had a huge game before who might see a big play, because that's what these coaches are all about.
That's exactly what Andy Reid said at his press conference today. He goes, it's going to be a guy out there in that game on Sunday that is going to make a big play that no one's talking about. No one's asking me about.
So for the Eagles, that would be, because they're so gifted, that would be maybe somebody like Zach Pascal, who you wrote about today on InsideTheBirds.com, or Quez Watkins.
Nice.
Right. And for the Chiefs, I mean, you know, he's young, he's a rookie, he's got some explosion to him, but Sky Moore maybe is involved in some type of gadgetry
He's so
play.
gifted. You're right, because in fact he's playing more in the slot and as a returner. But this kid, no, I know he just didn't have a great training camp, and plus they had the logjam at receiver. But he's super gifted. That's a good one, number 24.
He had
DB's number.
He had a podium today.
He did it. We had him on Sirius a couple times before the draft. He's a good dude.
Like, so liked him coming out of college.
Oh yeah, out of
I like.
Is it Eastern Michigan?
Yes.
Western.
I remember you were high on him.
The Bronx.
Western Michigan. Yeah.
Yes. So
a guy who you would think would be prototypical slot receiver because of his size, but
really
Greg thought he had the build and the strength to beat press eventually and be an outside guy.
I really like his short area quickness. I did. And I think that I'm interested to see if he's going to become a factor in this game. I mean, Kadarius Toney's a big question mark. Obviously, he was asked about, Andy Reid was asked about Kadarius Toney, and you tend to forget about him, but he said he's done everything he's been asked to do. Today's going to be the ultimate indicator. It's the hardest practice of the week. So, you know, it's kind of going to be, he wasn't going to give too much away, but it's a wait and see.
Thursday's almost always for teams that play on Sunday. Thursday's usually the longer practice. Friday's short. Wednesday's the install day. It's going to be fun. It's not easy to pick. Yeah, you could say the Eagles have the better roster, but the Chiefs have number 15.
Absolutely.
He's the equalizer. As good as Hurts has played, 15 is so special. Like Warren Sharper's telling me. I love Warren's stuff. Warren said he's a little bit like he said, when you look at the way that Mahomes has played, what he's had to do this year, that's why he's the MVP. Because without Tyreek Hill, they've had to manufacture offense, playing more 12 personnel this year than they ever had. And look, they've got guys you mentioned, and like maybe someone who you're not talking about. My guy from Penn, Justin Watson, who's like a designated deep threat.
That's a great
That's
a great pull. But you mentioned their heavy 12 personnel. Jody Forston's another player that
scored against the Eagles.
He did. Shovel pass, right?
It's funny because there were just years and years in Philadelphia where we thought Andy really wanted to play more 12 personnel because he kept getting other tight ends. You know, he had LJ Smith, he drafted Brent Selleck. Had Brent Selleck kind of come into his own. He signed he had a bunch of brothers who played in the league. Aaron and Schobel, Matt Schobel.
Even before that, he had Jeff Thomas.
Jeff Thomas, right.
They came out of mothballs because who got hurt? Oh, Chad Lewis. Well,
Chad Lewis got hurt. Right. And then toward the end, he drafted Clay Harbor with a 4th round pick. We had a conversation with Clay about it. We always felt that Andy wanted it to be more 12, more matchup driven, take advantage of it. But he could never get that second guy to really emerge. I mean, Matt Schobel had cobwebs on him while he was with an Eagle. I mean, he was never on the
number 89, Matt Schobel.
Nice guy.
The Bengals?
Bills? Yes.
One of the
No.
But that was
the
Bengals. The pass rusher played for the
that was Aaron Schobel. Yeah, you're right. The Bengals
brothers.
And wasn't there a Bo
Schobel? You're right, Bills. He played for the Bills, I think.
Was there a Bo Schobel?
I thought
there was an Aaron, a Bo, and a Matt.
There was a Bo Brink. There was a Bo who played for the Bills, but I'm not sure which one. Maybe there was a third.
Maybe we're confusing our Shobles. I don't know.
Right,
we did have Rob Gronkowski walking around here before,
Ron's
so maybe
here.
I'm thinking of guys who had two other
All right,
brothers.
who's next? Who's someone we're not talking about the Eagles defense here that could make a player who could be a star in this game?
We haven't really talked. We've talked about Reddick. We've talked about Sweat, but they're good at guard. We haven't really said much about Cox or Hargrave, and those guys had some pretty good years.
Yeah, I feel like we've been sort of dismissing them a little bit. Well, they've become an afterthought because we've been talking about the pass rushers, but
right.
I think Javon Hargrave could be a factor in this game. I really do.
Contract drive. Right.
Yeah. Well, you could say that about 15 different, but yeah, certainly, absolutely. Yeah. What about in the back end?
Marcus Epps.
He'll lay the wood.
And that's what I mean. He could separate someone from the football in a key spot.
Juju's knees don't want any of Marcus Epps.
Right. Well, you remember the hit that he put on. Who was that? Traylon Burks in the end zone against Tennessee.
Oh yeah.
Is that the one that knocked him? Oh wow.
Right out of the game.
It was Epps
on the first drive.
Right.
He's really physical. He's a good player. Reed Blankenship he'll play a lot because they're going to be spreading out.
He's physical, extremely.
All right, let me ask you guys about that. They have a decision to make. If they want to match up CJ Gardner-Johnson against Travis Kelce, if they want to bring CJ more into the spot,
that's what Greg thinks. Yeah.
So are you sort of making Avonte Maddox a situational base down only player and then bringing in Reed Blankenship to go back to your kind of pre-Maddox injury nickel package?
Well, who's going to Juju will be mostly in the slot, so you would think Maddox would be on the field.
He seemed like he was on a snap
unless the Chiefs are spread and you've got two interior slot guys, but you've got Brad Bear.
Okay,
got
12. Yes, and 12 he won't, and 12 he probably won't. But if they're in 11, obviously Kelce could be the flex tight end. I'm dropping Gardner Johnson down, and I'm as the cover on the slot tight end. And by the way, Kelce will line up at X.
So in that regard, then, if you're keeping both Maddox and CJ on the field for that, you're probably taking because you're White off and going
you're off,
one linebacker spot.
You could go dime. You could do a dollar defense with the 7.
Yep.
Because I'm telling you, they're going to do some 10 in this. The Chiefs are going to run some 10 personnel. We said this now for 2 years. The Eagles have gotten away with it. They're really weak at that outside corner backup. So when you get past Maddox, what do you really have?
It's bad. Yeah, Zach McPherson we talked about yesterday as someone that's not a capable outside player, especially in the Super Bowl. You don't want to throw him out there.
Right. No, that to me is an advantage. They know this. They know the Eagles depth chart. They know what the tape shows them. They don't have a good third outside corner.
You really hope there are no first quarter injuries to major players on either team. Sure. I mean, you never want that anyway, but you want this to be the fairest of fair fights. And right now it's pretty good. These teams are relatively healthy. They're nursing certain wounds, but you don't want something the Eagle fan will take it, of course, but you don't want something the quarterback goes out of the game, 6 snaps in, or
the right high ankle worse.
Yeah, or Chris Jones is all gone, or Hassan. By
the way, 95 Chris Jones is their X factor on defense. Whether they line him up, they will line him up on the outside. He is, and I know the Eagles line is great, but he is a game wrecker. He's been on a charge the second half, kind of like Devontae Smith, the receiver for the Eagles. So we'll see. I know they kind of, the Eagles coaches think like Andy does. He wants 5 blockers. We're not going to keep a tight end in. Look, they'll run 12. Stoll will be in there. He's a pretty good blocking tight end. But I also think the Eagles will go heavy 11 because, the Chiefs have depth, but they're young. I don't worry about any of those corners. I'm throwing against those guys.
They have depth on the back end, but not so much in the front 7. That's where I think that they could be exploited if there's any injuries or substitutions early.
All right. I want to take this moment in hour 3 to talk about a little bit of a different topic. I want to ask you about a few NFL related topics that aren't relative to the Super Bowl. And I want to ask you about a few draft things because once we get into Monday, it's free agency and draft, right? First thing I want to tell everybody is Rivers Casino Philadelphia is Philly's casino with everything you like to play. Check out Bet Rivers Sportsbook, Philly's first and best sportsbook and the only place to watch the birds. Plus, watch and wager on professional and college sports all year round. Enjoy luxury lounge seating, massive HD video wall, great game day food, and more. Keep the action going with electronic poker games at the Sportsbook Bar. Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, and we can all vouch for the massive video wall there.
Awesome.
I mean,
it's a great place to watch a game.
I could watch a cooking show there and it's just so
Remember,
amazing.
we did their game watches there, a couple of them. And it was great. It was a great place to watch a game. You don't miss anything. The sound's great. Bars are great. The great thing is they get it. So they have the bar right next to the sports book.
Right.
So it's a great setup right there in Delaware Avenue. You can't miss it. And we'll be there on Sunday.
All right. I want to ask you about Derek Carr because obviously the Raiders have to make a decision very soon on his future, right? How does that work? Okay.
So basically, his $32.5 million base salary becomes fully guaranteed on Tuesday. And $7.5 of his salary in 24 becomes fully guaranteed at midnight on Tuesday. So look, could they conceivably keep him and just wait till they find a trade partner by the draft? Sure, but that's probably not going to happen. Now he's going to visit the Saints. I expect the Jets to be on this. And we'll see who else. Look, he's a veteran quarterback. This is not a great draft class. Is it better than last year? Yeah, but it's not a great class. The Jets are probably a quarterback away from being a 10 or 11 win team. Their roster is really good. Joe Douglas, okay, he hasn't done well with Zach Wilson, but they're good at tight end. They're getting right in the offensive line. They're deep at tight end and super deep at receiver. Gary Wilson's here, by the way. Their defense is terrific. They're just missing a quarterback right now.
So the question you have to ask yourself if you're Joe Douglas is, do you go for Derek Carr, who can make you a 10 or 11 win team and probably nothing more than that?
High character guy, though.
Right. Or do you try to get a guy that you think can win you a Super Bowl?
Like Rodgers, right.
Like even Rodgers, or even back in the draft, if that's what they see.
Boy, that's
hard.
I'm not saying they wouldn't do it. They're going to get out of veteran. That's already been decided. It's just a matter of who it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one thing to bring in a veteran and let maybe that guy will mentor this guy. And the Jets they're looking at their coaching staff and see how they could fortify it to help Wilson. But at some point, you got to make a decision on Zach Wilson. It's been 2 years. He showed some promise year one, terrible year two.
Yeah.
He's very immature. And these Jets fans have suffered for years. So you look at the Eagle fans.
Yeah.
Okay, Andrew and I have grown up here. I'm much older than him. I remember before Jaws. Okay, Randall was fun. Then he fizzled. He did well elsewhere. Before McNabb, there were some dry spots probably going. You know about that. We demanded Philly quarterback. We want a quarterback. Philly's got one right now. Right. Jalen Hurts. He's clearly their guy.
And it's been a while since the end of the McNabb era in 2009, right? So this is 2022.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I mean, 23 technically, but 23 seasons. So that's 13 years before you finally found the guy. I mean, they won a Super Bowl, but still, but finally found a guy that you feel like you can win for a long time.
Honestly, I would, getting back to the Eagles on that point, because of the super high character that Hurts has. Family upbringing. I've talked about this ad nauseum about the father being involved in coaching. High character guy, responsible, takes hard coaching, wants to be great. Got coached by Nick Saban. Look, people are saying he's going to crack under the pressure. I don't see that.
I don't.
That's another narrative. Andy.
Yeah.
You've studied this kid.
Yeah, I don't see it. And you and I have, I think you and I have talked about this even on the Fanatic. I just think that there's something within Jalen Hurts' DNA that blocks out all the outside noise. He's solely focused.
How he does it, lots of stuff. I just don't know how he did it.
At 24 years old, I don't know how you can remain that poised when there's so many things going on around you, so many deterrents potentially. You're hearing all these naysayers, and it doesn't seem to faze the guy. He's focused on winning and what's going on in that locker room. So
to the point where, if the Eagles believed that their formula of drafting a backup quarterback high is successful and works, even if this isn't how they envisioned it, if they were to do that again, second round, third round, take a good young quarterback, I don't think Jalen Hurts would be fazed by it.
I agree. In fact, I guess Howie finally went on the record and see, it's funny, the quotes that he had from media night, I knew exactly what he meant. This is what we were all talking about. When Wentz was upset that they drafted Hurts, do you think Kurt Warner, who's here, and I know the story, when they drafted Matt Leinart, he could care less. He's like, he's not going to beat me out. He never did.
Right.
He didn't care.
Internally, you may not be happy about it, but you don't.
But you know, hey, bring it on. What'd you say?
Right. Yes.
I would say
That's what Aaron Rodgers
beat me out. Hurts not going to beat me out.
If you're a competitor, you're playing at the highest level. Who cares? Yeah, why would you care?
The Packers draft Jordan Love, and Rodgers wins 2 straight MVPs, doesn't he? Right?
Yeah. Now, it pissed him off.
Right.
But as you just said,
but it made him play better.
Hey, let's go.
Right.
Okay, he was pissed off. He was a little irrational. And by the way, Brett Favre won it out.
Oh, and Brett Favre wasn't nice to Aaron Rodgers when they drafted him.
Although Rodgers and Favre are pretty close.
Now they are, but I know
it
that
took time. Right, it took time.
Right.
But Wentz's entitlement, like, hey, what are you doing here? You can't do this. I want out.
Show, yeah.
Are you kidding?
Right.
He was at a much lower grade in the second round. But why would you care? And they went to him to say, listen, dude, we just extended your contract 10 months ago. Why are you upset?
I know.
Insecure. Just an insecure guy.
Ridiculous.
Andrew, the Eagles draft 10th because of that fantastic trade that they pulled off with the New Orleans Saints. One of many trades they've made with the New Orleans Saints that have benefited them.
A heist.
So 10th overall. So let's assume, and I know things will change. We got the combine coming up, but some of the names are going to be, there's going to be quarterbacks like Levis, like Bryce Young.
Sure.
There's going to be the Jalen Carter. There's going to be the Will Anderson, right? From Alabama. When you start to look at 10, knowing how the Eagles like to think, cornerback, offensive tackle, because they will draft an offensive lineman and maybe Lane Johnson's predecessor. So is there anybody that sticks out there as you get to 8, 9, 10 area that you think?
Well, the answer I have in a couple, it could change in a couple of weeks, depending on Lane Johnson and what they ultimately decide to do or what he decides to do. But right now I'm looking at Joey Porter Jr. I'm sure that'll make you happy being a Penn State.
It's a little high though, right? For a guy
well, you have to see. There's a lot of time between now and then, so it's kind of hard to gauge because he could be a guy that excels and aces the interview process.
True,
and he performs higher than many expect at the combine.
He could also run better. I mean, nobody thought Owe was going to run that well a couple of years ago. With
classic example of somebody who rised up draft board. So we'll have to see.
Yeah. Dude, what do you like about Joey Porter Jr.?
I like that. I think he's a ball magnet. I think he's a smart player, and I think he's physical at the catch point. And I think that's what the Eagles need. When you look at James Bradbury, he's probably not going to be here. We talked yesterday about the lack of young corners, and from a developmental standpoint, when you're looking at Zach McPherson and Josiah Scott and Mario Goodrich and those type of players, they don't have a cornerstone, a blue chip prospect to develop.
Right. Interestingly, though, not for a lack of desire. We've criticized this team in the past for sort of ignoring that position, but we also know,
I'm saying that.
I know, we also know how much they like Patrick Surtain and thought about the idea of trying to get him, but Denver took him. They stayed. They took him, so they went up and got Devontae Smith, J.C. Horn. We know is a guy that they liked. And there's another cornerback. Was it this past year? Well, Sauce Gardner is a guy they love, but they just weren't able to draft.
Close, yeah.
But J.C. Horn was definitely somebody they were on.
Right. I believe that if they have the opportunity to draft an elite corner in the first round, they'll pull the trigger on it. It's just so
it won't be safety.
Yeah, no.
I had to do it.
No, it won't. It could be Troy Polamalu reincarnated. They still wouldn't draft him.
I think you brought this up to me. It would be worse. My reaction if they drafted a safety at 10 would be even when I know exactly where I was when they drafted Hurts. So I was texting with someone with a team, and I usually don't. I watch a draft, but in my office I have the sound down. I don't really want to hear it unless I feel like I need to. So I see nothing. I know nothing about. I wasn't looking at Twitter, and I see exclamation point. I'm like, what the hell? I look back. I'm like, wow. I just stared at him like, I don't. What happened here? They didn't trade Wentz.
Yeah.
So what the hell's going on here?
But you'd be more surprised if they took a safety than when they took.
I would be. Oh, dude,
I think I'm going to be too.
That might be because Banner. We have to ask Banner next time we have him on. Did they have like a rule about not drafting safeties early? Well, Doc was he?
I think it just goes back to positional value, and there's always going to be
first rounder, right?
No, Doc was a second rounder. Yeah,
second rounder.
I think it goes back to whenever they get to wherever they're picking on. There's always probably a good safety, but then there's always probably a lineman, offensive, defensive lineman, or a corner or somewhere, something that they value more that winds up getting selected.
You said it yesterday.
Just like this last year.
Kyle Hamilton was right there.
Davis. And I don't even think they gave Kyle Hamilton a thought.
They didn't. Look, I understand. I know teams are somewhat split on Hamilton. He had everything you loved about size and speed.
Should be split on Jordan Davis too. He was a traits guy more than a production guy.
That's 100% right.
Yeah,
I'm not. We're gonna have to. I don't know about Jordan Davis. I'm not seeing it yet.
Yeah, you got to be special. You got to show something special, even in your limited sample size.
He's a good kid. He's super accountable. He knows he's got to get his weight under control.
Yeah,
but you can't just be a flash player. That's LeVar Arrington, by the way. You guy from Penn State.
Yeah. Wait,
gotta
are you
be-
calling him a flash player, or is he?
No, he
He's
was
also
LeVar.
walking around, so I don't know if
No.
you're seeing him or.
LeVar was really talented,
Yeah,
but it was a big flash, and then you just wouldn't see it
it's
anymore.
fair. It's fair.
He just would drift.
And actually, to stay on the Penn State category, there was a time in his career recently where Miles Sanders was more of a flash player than a consistent player.
Yep.
And we talked about Saquon Barkley being a great athlete, an explosive athlete, but as a running back, he still can learn about the position between the tackles, setting up your blocks.
Big
Penn State thing.
I wouldn't understand. But I would say this with Jeremiah Washburn and Tracy Rocker, they've got a big job in their hands because you saw what Nick Rallis has done, the linebackers coach, with TJ Edwards and Kaiser White and other linebackers that they have. But this one's going to be hard with Drew Davis because remember, he didn't play a ton of snaps in college. And no, the Georgia fans say, oh, they were up by so much he didn't have to play. That's not true. He was not ready at that point of his career to play 70% of the snaps because he was not in good enough physical shape.
And he's got a lot. He's got a lot of work.
And he has to start next year. You cannot have him not be. He can't be their third tackle next year. He has to start.
Probably gonna be him and Milton Williams. I would imagine.
Well, depending on who.
Fletcher or Hargrave.
I still think one will come back. And I'm not.
One and a half. That might factor into their thinking that Jordan Davis, we can't bank on him being a 3-down player or even a 2-down player, right? By next year, we may have to bring one of these guys back.
I think one's coming back, not both. And Brett, I'm not ruling out. I know you're thinking he's not coming. I'm not ruling him out. Depends on how much Bradbury wants. They'll have a walkaway number. How he's shown. I've talked about Jordan Hicks, but there's some other players over the last 3 to 4 years. He just said, I can't do it. I'm not doing it. Now they agreed. They got Reddick early, and I don't know if he turned down more money. They were just in early on him, well before the first day. It was kind of like, okay, this is a guy on the. We need to stand on a pass rusher for a 34 front, 2 overhangs. But I'm fascinated to see what they do in this free agency.
You know, I have a lot of decisions to make,
and who comes back.
A lot of financial decisions, a lot of merit-based decisions. They're all tied together.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm interested to see what way they go. I mean, there's a lot of players I can see them not re-signing. One of them being probably Miles Sanders. Now, given the position and things like that, they use him sporadically. It's just, he hasn't been an overly consistent player.
What a roller coaster! Because at the beginning of the year, I think we all felt Miles Sanders not coming back, and in the middle of the year, how consistent he'd become.
Well, no, what I said is actually let's just see before.
We shouldn't just rule it out, right?
To start to see, so I said let's see. As you were saying, he was on a really roll, then he got hurt. Really great roll, and he got hurt. Let me put it to you this way: I don't see him getting like a Nick Chubb $12.5 million a year. What would be your number to pay him per season?
Well,
Connor was around 7.
What did you say Chubb is?
Chubb's $12.5 million.
Oh.
Henry $12.5 million a year. He's not in their class. Sorry.
No, he's not.
No, he's not. In fact, Chubb probably deserves more than $12.5 million if McCaffrey's making whatever he's making. So I think 8 to 11 range is probably what you'd have to pay him.
I like yours. 8 to 10 is what
I don't know if they'll have that.
I would say probably 8 to 10.
Yeah, 8 to 10.
Just, he's coming off a Pro Bowl season, right, and a career season at that. But there is the injury history and the volume question. Can he be a 3-down running back consistently?
Okay, now if they walk away from Sanders, we've seen the best of Kenny Gainwell. It's been pretty good for a couple games. Look really good. Are you willing to commit 12 to 14 touches to Gainwell?
I think that limits his effectiveness.
Really?
I think in the long haul it would. I think
it's too few or
no.
Enough?
I think that would be too many in the long term. I think he could do it in the for a handful of games, but I think asking him to do that would be a big ask for someone like of his stature and just his college production.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. Unless the Eagles felt that by year 3 he was going to be experienced enough, bigger enough, and be ready to carry that kind of load.
He has, to his credit, he has stayed healthy.
Right.
He has been.
Right.
It's
funny how that's the question, by the way, that follows all the Memphis running, right? Whether it's Tony Pollard,
right?
Sure.
Whether it was Darrell Henderson, whether Antonio Gibson, the same thing, is that they play in such a system that favors the receiving element that maybe that they're not bred to be 3-down running backs.
I would say 8 to 10 touches. We don't know about the kid they got from the Niners.
Sermon.
Trey Sermon. We got to see him. They, as we noted a month or so ago, because people are asking, like, why are they not playing him? They have their rotation, but they were not going to cut him under any circumstance. They wanted to see him in their offseason program, but they'll need to add another back. If Sanders doesn't get back, they have to. They don't have a choice.
Right. And they could still go with that committee approach and find a mid-range free agent running back, one that's sort of a bigger back profile, and then always go with Kenny Gainwell and lean on him. And Boston Scott's not going to, he's always around.
His contract's up.
And you have Trey Sermon. I mean, Boston Scott's not going to cost you a fortune to bring him back at all.
Although they paid him like 1.7, I think. Yeah, they paid him pretty well.
And I think they like they're intrigued with what they have in Trey Sermon, which is why, to your point, Adam, they want to give him another look this summer with a full year in the system, training camp, and the whole nine.
If I'm them, I would not draft a running back. It's Gainwell, get Sermon in there. They'll have another back. It's not, to me, it's like 12th on the priority list.
Yeah.
Outside corners, they got Bradbury's up. Slade's 31. He's only signed for this year and one more. They don't have a backup outside corner. They got two of their top safeties are up. Two of their top three are up. They got decisions to make. Two tackles are up. D tackles are up. As you mentioned, Andrew, and I agree with Lane Johnson, this could be the year to draft his successor. They have way more priorities than running back.
They have a lot of priorities. The one thing you could say, even with the running back one, is that because almost everybody else on offense comes back, they should be a pretty formidable team. I don't think you have to worry about a collapse or just not being the same. I mean, they have more building blocks, even with the older linemen, some of the older guys, than they do guys that they need to mature and progress along the way.
Sure. Their offense is going to be dynamite with Hurts, the 3 pass targets. The line is going to be great. I don't worry about their offense. It's their defense. They have so many guys up. No depth at outside corner.
That's
It's linebacker. They'll be fine. And having Reddick for 2 more years, and they'll extend him.
They need to upgrade from Quez Watkins as the number 3. They could stand to do that.
I agree. That's a great point. I like that one.
You could see Zach Pascal starting to eat into his snap count. I think he's made some blemishes. There's been some blemishes late down the stretch there. And I don't think that I think they're a little hesitant to force feed him the football in a playoff game. And when the game's, stakes are high.
But again, it's the defense. They've got a lot of work to do in free agency. No question.
Totally. I have one more question for you that was asked by one of our audience. So I'm going to put it out to both of you. Real quick, Rivers Casino, Philadelphia is Philly's casino with everything you like to play. Check out Bet Rivers Sportsbook, the only place to watch the birds. Plus, watch and wager on your favorite sports all year round. Rivers Casino, Philadelphia. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, one of the audience, and this is a really good question. I think it's really challenging to answer, but
look at Apple Pods tagging us.
Oh, thanks to Apple Pods.
That's awesome.
For tagging us. Yeah, that's a great job by them. The question is, what type of game benefits the Eagles more, a shootout or a defensive slugfest?
Oh, that's a great. You know what? I can't believe I'm going to say this. Wash my mouth out with soap. I think what actually, not that they'll do this, because Andy's going to come out throwing like you've never seen. They'll be throwing. It would actually behoove them if it was low scoring, because I don't know that you want to put Hurts in a situation. He's shown he could handle a lot of volume this year. This is our big test, and he's done that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know against Mahomes. You want to start throwing. Mahomes will be in the 40 attempt plus. Might be in the 50 in this game.
Right.
Hurts is good in the low 30s. I think that's kind of his sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think you want to be in a slugfest throwing the football like the full Super Bowl like that. That's like once in a lifetime game. I don't think you could ask Jalen to do that at this point.
It's a good point.
I don't know if you want to do that. I've been pretty impressed by him. He's been so good, but he's not been in a slugfest game where he's really. I'd have to look it up.
The last time was probably the Chiefs. Well, even the Chiefs last year.
He played pretty well. By the way,
he threw for 380.
Andrew, you brought that up. People forget. Because people refuse to give Hurts credit last year when he played well. I always said, look, despite the struggles, remember when I said Kirk Cousins? People thought they don't like Kirk Cousins, so I thought it was a bad comparison. I go, no, folks, it's an NFL quarterback. I said Hurts could be top 10 and top 12. I thought his upside. Now I got to raise that up because he's exceeded that. But the thing we just don't know, and I was asked this on an interview today, what happens if he's got to throw a lot? He hasn't been asked to do it a lot.
No,
we just don't. But you make a great point. The week 3 game, I know that the week 2 was Niners last year. He was awesome in that game, but they lost and they got clobbered because their defense didn't show up.
Jeff and I were at that game.
One of the rare times you'll see a 91-yard completion on a series that does not end in any points at all.
That was week 2. You were
How
there.
do you have a 91-yard play and not get any points on that drive? I will never understand.
Was it 17-11 or some
Odd
odd score?
bad. Jalen Rager stepped out of bounds. It was a whole thing.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. That was the San Francisco.
Yeah, that was week 2. And then week 3, you and I were there.
Yeah.
And that was when you saw him sort of go toe to toe for a while. And then the game kind of got out of hand.
If I remember correctly, the Chiefs were up pretty big at halftime and then kind of called the dogs off.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, yeah, but we're talking about his first year as a starter in week 3, and he didn't give up. I think that's the big part. It's easy to, even if the other team calls dogs off, you still have to go out there and make plays. It's not like they're not playing defense at all. They're just not maybe coming after you. And he made a lot of plays in the second half of that game.
No, the only thing is, though, and we were just talking about this. See, this is where it becomes a problem. If it's a throw fest, which the Eagles have the talent to do it, but here's the problem. When you spread the Eagles defense out, when you get to Zach McPherson, and I don't care who the Chiefs do, Justin Watson, they're in trouble. And by the way, we're going to have my good friend Ryan Leaf coming on in a second. I can't wait to talk to him.
Awesome.
But I'm telling you, it's a problem when you go to third outside corner.
Absolutely.
I'm going to talk to Zach McPherson today and ask him if he's
Don't say that. Don't say that. All right. We thank Andrew Checo. He's going to be winding up going out to the press conferences pretty soon. So that might be it. Right as we get rid of Andrew, we welcome in Ryan Leaf, former Chargers quarterback. And listen, everybody knows.
Sportsbook. Yep.
What are you doing, PointsBet?
I got my own show. I got my own TV show. We call it The Straight Line with Ryan Leaf, 4 days a week, all NFL, college football related. And I picked every single game this year, and we went 33 games over 500.
He showed me his shirt. I was like, holy smokes.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. If you don't buy it, go back and watch The Straight Line. All the episodes are on YouTube, and you'll see all my picks. We picked every single game this year.
Now,
either against the spread or total.
It's really, I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, that's first of all, Straight Line is a really interesting name.
Like that one?
Because you're a straight shooter.
Little play on words?
Yeah, a little play on words. By the way, welcome to Inside the Birds.
Thank you very much.
Adam Caplan. I'm Geoff Mosher. It's a real pleasure to have you on. Straight Line could be all about you because you are as straight of a shooter as it gets. I imagine everything you've been through in life has enabled that for you.
Well, it does, because there's just, I used to be such a liar, manipulator and everything like that. Never was a straight shooter. I was just trying to always get what I wanted or what I needed. And what I found with sharing my story, when it's the truth, you don't have to remember all the nonsense you told someone or the rabbit trails you built up telling somebody this and to keep this story going. And it's now when I just stand up and talk, it's the truth, right? And when I do it on the sports side of things, it's my opinion. And I'm not hypercritical of people because I know how that affects people as a former player. So I'm not hypercritical of anybody. Mm-hmm. But if I see something that maybe I can relate to, or maybe see myself in someone else, of course I'm going to talk about it because I can relate and understand it.
What got you out? And I know you've talked about being in jail will humble you, but what got you to wake up and say, stop lying, be truthful? I know your father, and I get that, your husband and all that, but what?
But I wasn't before, right. All that came after. So yeah.
What made you say, all right, enough, stop, I got to be better? What was it? Is there any particular?
I don't think there was ever that moment where it was like, you need to be better, Ryan.
Well, no, you went to jail, but
yeah, even then it didn't. So it was
really not even then.
No, my roommate though in prison, he was an Afghan Iraqi war veteran, and he tried to better himself in there every day. I watched him do it. And I just thought he was silly. Like, why? Look at us. We're losers. We're warehoused. We're in prison, and finally he had enough of my nonsense against one day and felt comfortable enough to confront me. And he said, Brian, you don't know the value that you have, not only for the men in here, but for when you get out. And he said, we're going to go down to the prison library and help prisoners who don't know how to read, learn how to read. And so I've had many of those come to Jesus moments in my life, from mentors, coaches, family, and everything. I just said, I got this. And I can't tell you why. Maybe because the substance that I had been abusing was out of my system for a long time, 26 months probably had been that time. I went. And I remember still going, like, begrudgingly. I was in this red jumpsuit walking down a prison hallway, metaphorically kicking rocks, like going, this is stupid. This isn't going to help me. Doesn't he know how important I am? And the irony of the guy who's in a prison who still thinks he's important is exactly the problem. So I walked into this room, and here were these men in a place where you're supposed to show no vulnerability, come up to me and go, Ryan, I need help. I can't read. Can you help me? And I'd never heard another man in my life say that. Growing up in the cowboy culture in Montana, in the locker rooms of the NFL and college, I'd never seen a man say those words, that I need help. Can you help me? And so at first I was like, what's wrong with this guy? Right. And then I started helping, and I kept doing it. And a month passed. Now 2 months passed. Now I'm the TA for the substance abuse counselor while I'm in there. And what I found is that I was being of service to a human being for the first time in my life. I used to think what I did on Saturdays and Sundays was me being of service. And nope, this was it. And no one was seeing it. Like no one. Like it wasn't, the newspapers weren't seeing it. It wasn't doing it for publicity or anything like that. It was just two guys in an incredibly difficult situation, adverse conditions, there for one another. And I knew when I got out, it was going to have to be at the foundation of who I was, or nothing was going to change. So that's the moment. I didn't know what was happening at the time. I can look back on it now when you ask the question, and I have an answer for you.
How when you make that decision in your life, I'm not going to be that guy anymore, I'm going to be somebody different, there's always still forces that try to drag you back. How hard is that?
Old behavior is my force that drags me back. You know, my ego, you get placed on a pedestal your whole life. Also, you know, being one of the biggest busts of all time in the eyes of a lot of fans and media and stuff like that, that gets thrown in my face a lot, and that gets me angry and resentful around it, because they're smarter than that. They know that's not the word you should associate with anybody who ever made it to the NFL, especially one who came from Montana, where there'd never been a first round draft pick ever in the state of Montana. And I bought into it, and so I get resentful now. I would get resentful about it, and so I've had to work through those things. So yeah, there are days where I'm just, I'm angry about stuff, but I'm more self-aware. I see a therapist. I have an amazing partner in my wife. And then everything gets brought right back down to earth and levels things out, because I have a 5-year-old, and he doesn't care one iota what I did, where I come from, or whether anybody ever applauds for me. It's all about him. And so he brings me back down to earth pretty quick.
Awesome.
How can you tell in this day and age? I mean, there's so much, athletes are on social media. I mean, you get to see everything in an athlete's life, regardless what sport they play.
But you don't see everything.
No, that's what I was just about to ask. Can you tell when you think someone is headed down a bad path? And
I think you can see some flags, red flags that pop up. And then when you show them the mirror, you hope that they're willing to make some changes. But most people aren't okay with being shown the mirror. I know I wasn't for the longest time.
Right.
If I would have gotten healthy and sober and on the timeline of the people that cared about me and loved me, my family and stuff, it would have been 10 years previous. And so sometimes you're not ready, but it is our responsibility as someone who's gone through something like this to show them the mirror, right? Say, this is how you're behaving. This is how you're acting. I just want you to know that. Clearly up to you on whether you want to address it. I'm here if you need any help with that. And that's the best way I can say it. Be part of the solution, stay out of the result, and that means I did my part.
Have you reached out to players, athletes, anyone in life where, as Geoff just brought up, you just saw it and you go, wait a minute, I need to say something?
Yeah, oh yeah, I've reached out to players all the time, current and former.
How do you do it?
I get their number and I get to them. Especially former players, just because the Vincent Jackson death for me was something that triggered me in the moment. It was the height of the pandemic. I'd been in a hotel room, alone, dying myself, and so I knew exactly how he was feeling, and it made me so angry with the NFL, because they knew as well. They'd been called, and they sent like the police, who just could knock on the door, and he wasn't going to answer it. Like there needs to be a former players group that are like me in that moment, where I just get like the bat signal, go to Tampa, knock on his door, because he's going to answer it, because I've been exactly where he's at, and I can say there's a way out. There's a way out. And instead he's gone, and that can't happen anymore.
Do people reach out to you unprompted? What happens more? You reach out to someone, or you get unprompted calls from people who know your story? And
people reach out to me, and most of the time when somebody comes up to me, a family member, I give them my number, because again, like if I call somebody else, they're going to be like, I don't know. They don't know what they're talking about. But if they have my number and they choose to call me, that's a choice.
Sure.
It's being active, proactive, all of it. And so that's the important thing. So yeah, my on social media, my direct messages are open, and you will not believe the amount of messages people have sent, either saying they need help or just wanting to tell somebody that they're going through a tough part. That's sometimes the most freeing thing, is to actually, own up to something and say, I feel this way. I'm going through this. I'm doing this. Their wives don't even know or anything like that. It's freeing and incredibly powerful.
It seems, Ryan, that's the issue we have in this country. People, men or women, are afraid to admit that they've got an issue, because they're going to be judged. You went through it when you were drafted. The criticism you talked about, because you try to be good to people, because you went through it. It's just the world we live in with social media. It's hard to avoid it. He and I have worked in television, radio. I would be on Sports Center. Someone didn't like the way I looked that day, so they're gonna crush me on Twitter. How do we get through this world like that?
What other people think of us is none of our business.
Okay.
It's an affirmation my therapist had me start using about 6 years ago. And your brain is the strongest muscle in your body, and you got to train it. And when I first started saying it in the mirror, I didn't believe it. And I guarantee you right now, when I wake up in the morning, tomorrow morning, after my shower, and I look in the mirror and say it, I'm going to believe it. And I do. I believe it. What other people whatever they have to say or whatever they think of me is absolutely none of my business. I'm going to do my job, and that is to analyze a football game or football players and talk about it. And I study and I do the best I can. And that's it. Whatever anybody else has to say about it, especially these fan bases that are so rabid. I went on Good Morning Football a few weeks ago and said that this year's Eagles team gave me kind of 2021 Tennessee Titans vibes, one and done. And I mean, Eagles fans went absolutely crazy on me, but none of it bothered me.
Yeah, just an opinion, anyway, right? By the way,
and they didn't. They whooped tail, and I love to see it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's strange.
All right, so you told me a story when we were talking over at Sports Grid about, now you were around Jalen Hurts in 2020 at the Combine?
I was speaking. I spoke to Alabama right after his freshman year.
Okay.
And then I also covered him on one of my last gigs before COVID hit for ESPN, covering his pro day.
What can you tell us about him?
Well, he's absolutely the hardest working guy I've ever met. Dude,
that says a lot. You've been around a lot of people who work hard.
Dude will just outwork anybody. And I remember when he was signed by Philadelphia, I said to myself and a couple of my friends, like, Carson Wentz was not long for this job now, because he was just going to outwork him, and he was going to put the pressure on the coaching staff to play him. And the ownership loved him. They loved his work ethic, and everybody in the locker room has loved him, regardless of whether he's the backup or not. Just look at what he went through at Alabama and how he was still the most beloved player on that Crimson Tide team after being benched at halftime of the national championship, after he was the guy that got them to 2 consecutive national championships. All right.
Yeah.
So I love him to death. I love his mindset. He's the son of a coach. He's got his head right on right. I don't know if we could have 2 better examples for quarterbacks in this league, in the future of this league, than in this game.
Who is that guy for you when you got into the league in the Chargers locker room that was, someone you needed to lean on and could be there for you like that?
Well, there were 2 guys that I needed to lean on that I should have. And that was Junior Seau and Rodney Harrison.
Yeah.
And until this day, when I go and speak to rookies and I go to the Combine and I talk to young kids, I say, once you were drafted, it's all over. All right. It starts over again. Doesn't matter if you were drafted first overall or if you were, Mr. Irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Go into that locker room. You find a guy that's played 8+ years. You go up to him and you ask him how he did it, and then you follow his advice verbatim. That's how you get to be a success in this league, not what you've done, right? It's about what you can learn and how you can get better. And I think the guys that we've heard Patrick Mahomes talk about all the time. He just sat in Alex Smith's back pocket that whole year. That's all he did. Followed him around like a little lost puppy, sat without Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy, and just, he just absorbed everything. And that's what you need to do. You don't know everything just because you're drafted high in the NFL draft.
And obviously what you mentioned about Vincent Jackson and what happened with him in Tampa, Junior, of course. I mean, do you think the NFL, and it's not just the company, but the fans, we've talked a lot more lately about anxiety, mental health, the importance of it. Are we far enough down the road of conversations of it, or is there more that need to be had? And how do we have the discussions? Because I feel like now we know it's there, but what's the next step?
But you can't see it. And that's a huge problem.
Right.
And everybody, we're starting to talk about it more. Yes. It's starting to be talked about more, but the stigma still exists.
Yes.
Just look at when Simone Biles over at the Olympics came out and talked about it. I mean, it was not 50-50 even. It was 75% of like vitriol at her.
Right.
People don't understand it. They don't see it. And it's been so stigmatized in our country that you're shamed because of it.
Yeah.
And that's a big reason why, to the point of people and former players are more fearful of people knowing that they need help than actually going and getting the help that they need.
Yeah.
And that's the bigger problem in all this. And we're losing our brothers. And no, I think that, the NFL has to do so much more. And they're not going to, because they understand what their product is and they know what makes them their money. So it's our responsibility as former players to be there for one another. We have to be responsible for one another.
Has the NFLPA stepped in?
I think they've done a horrible job too, simply because, first off, they should have a former player on their negotiating board. They don't. When they go to collectively bargain, because every current player is going to be a former player. And I've talked to a ton of current players that they believe all the benefits that come due to them later, they look at that as almost welfare or charity. I won't need that. I've made hundreds of millions of dollars playing pro football. No, you've earned these benefits. That's what they're there for. They just don't ever believe they'll be a former player. So they need a former player on the board that negotiates when they get to the CBA. Otherwise, all that stuff happens. There's a reason why we only have insurance for the first 5 years out of the NFL, right when all of our health conditions start to kick in, right? And then and that's not there. The idea that you have to be a vested player to get your pension. Damar Hamlin, if he never plays another down, but he's healthy enough to get another job, he won't have the disability. He won't be vested. He won't have a 401k, and he'll almost have given his life on the field because of it. So there's a ton that has to change still.
Ryan, can't thank you enough.
You bet, guys.
Awesome. Great stuff.
Go Eagles.
I was going to ask
Yeah, Eagles by 3.
Eagles by 3.
34-31.
All right.
Nice.
What was the spread the last time we checked?
-1.5.
Okay.
It hasn't moved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is going to be a close game, you think?
I do.
I mean, obviously,
at first I thought it was going to be more of a blowout by the Eagles, but the more and more I get closer to it, Mahomes is going to make it a game. And it may just ultimately come down to who has the ball last, and I'm hoping it's Philly.
Did you do your show from here?
We did the show from here.
Where can we find it?
You can find it at YouTube. You go to PointsBet Sportsbook on YouTube, and then you have our channel right there where the Straight Line with Ryan Leaf.
What else are you doing?
Good Morning Football. I'm going to be covering the combine, be doing a bunch of that, stuff.
See you out there.
Yeah. And call games on the weekends for Westwood One, the NFL, and ESPN for college football.
Man, dude, your plate is full.
I have to be.
East Coast, brother.
Do you like being a play-by-play guy? Or I imagine you're a color commentator, I should say. Yeah.
My favorite thing to do.
And
you wouldn't, I've seen these guys getting paid $1 million a game to call games. You can pay me $1 and I'll do it. And I'll do it better, and I'll do it, and I'll work harder, I swear.
You feel like you just have an innate sense on how
to love
communicate.
I love doing it. And it's the coolest thing. You prepare like you did as a player. You watch film, you get all ready, you walk into the stadiums, you get to be around the atmosphere, the goosebumps, and then you never leave with an L. It's the best possible world you can live in.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good, man.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it, everybody. Ryan Leaf, former Chargers quarterback, the Straight Line on PointsBet.
Yep.
You can find that show on YouTube. All right. That is going to do it for hour 3 of Inside the Birds live from Radio Row. Big thanks, of course, to Ryan Leaf. Thanks to Andrew DeCecco, Adam Caplan, Geoff Mosher. We'll be back for one more hour of live streaming pretty soon, and hopefully another array of great guests. So we'll catch you then.